Okay, welcome everybody. This is Randy with RealMMAnews.com, and we're going to start off going back to this past weekend and talking about UFC 199. I already did a podcast where I gave my thoughts on the whole Ariel Helwani situation. Of course, there's been some developments out of that. I think nobody was too shocked that Ariel had actually been getting paid by Zuffa, but he explained it well. I don't want to get into all that. Zuffa keeps a tight rein on everybody, and at any moment, you could be on their bad side, and it can cripple your career. So, I don't even want to go there on that again. I want to talk about the main event, Bisping versus Rockhold, because I think, from what I've seen, is everybody seems really happy for Bisping, but kind of like he got lucky, and, he's going to lose his belt his next fight. And I'm not so sure that's the case. And let me give you a few reasons why. Michael Bisping, we all know it's a great story. He's been around for 10 plus years, won the Ultimate Fighter. He's been consistent. He's lost some key fights. But if you look at his record, let me pull up his record real quick because this is important. And there's a few things that you can say about Bisping. He's not usually a knockout artist. He's not usually the most exciting fighter. But the man has a record that is second to almost none. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer without a doubt, especially now winning this belt. It's his first title shot, and he gets it done in spectacular fashion. And there are some people in life, not just in fighting, that step up when it really, really matters. Bisping's first 3 years of his fighting career, he didn't drop a single fight. He's not fighting world beaters, guys you'd really know. He beat and then his next fight in 2007, he faced an unbeaten Rashad Evans, lost a split decision. Rashad goes on to win the title. We know the story there. Rashad didn't keep it too long. He beats Lieben, and then at UFC 100, he has probably one of the most replayed and well-known ugly knockouts you could ever have against Dan Henderson at UFC 100. That's the largest pay-per-view in history. More people's probably seen UFC 100 and seen Michael Bisping being cold-cocked, unconscious. It's unbelievable. And if you think back to that moment in time, how many fighters do you know of that get knocked unconscious in such a brutal fashion, and then not only to go on to have a decent career after that, but years later win the title? The Dan Henderson fight was in 2009, so in 2016, 7 years later, he goes on and knocks out what many consider to be an almost unbeatable Luke Rockhold. And if you look at cases of people getting knocked out, Ronda Rousey definitely comes to mind. She was traumatized by that knockout. She was beaten up for the first round, beaten up for most of the second round, and then knocked unconscious, and her whole world shattered. She seems like she has serious trauma from that knockout. She hasn't fought since. She talked about suicide and how her whole world has come crashing down, and hasn't fought since and may not fight again. I'm starting to question whether Rousey will ever fight again. She is that emotionally damaged from that event. And it's a high profile fight. She got knocked out. Bisping, same thing, high profile, got knocked out. The thing with Bisping, though, is after that knockout loss to Henderson, a few months later he comes back and he TKOs Dennis Kang. So not only did he come back and look good, he got a great win. And, then he fought Wanderlei Silva, lost a decision, and look back at that. Rashad probably wasn't juiced up. We know Henderson was on TRT. We know Wanderlei is, on everything. So he loses to Wanderlei, and then he goes on and wins 4 more in a row before losing a fight to Chael Sonnen that was later. Most people thought he won that fight. I was kind of happy to see Sonnen win it because that set up the rematch with Anderson Silva again. So, he loses to Sonnen. Then he beats Brian Stann I mean, think about that. The guy just keeps winning. Then he faces Vitor Belfort, gets head kicked, gets TKO'd essentially. We know Veltor was juiced to the goddamn gills. And then he has a really good fight against Alan Belcher. I just rewatched that fight last night, as a matter of fact. Hell of a fight. Alan Belcher is just a beast. Tough son of a bitch. Then he drops another fight to Tim Kennedy. No shame in losing to Tim Kennedy. Tim Kennedy's a bad son of a bitch. Then he beats Kung Lee. And then he has the loss to Rockhold, the guillotine choke. Then he rattles off 3 more wins before getting the title shot. Along the way, beating Anderson Silva. And once again, in that Silva fight, what a badass he is. He essentially gets knocked unconscious at the end of the 3rd round, comes back, wins the 4th round, arguably wins the 5th round, wins the fight in most people's eyes, and that sets him up for taking the short notice fight against Luke Rockhold, who'd already beat his ass, and knocks Luke Rockhold out in 3 minutes 36 seconds of the 1st round. What a career. What a maniac. Bisping will be the first to tell you that he comes off as an asshole. He says stupid shit. I can relate to that. I guarantee during this podcast, at some point during this day, I'm going to say something I regret. And I'm close to the same age as Bisping. And that's the other thing. He's 37 years old. And he looks as good as he's ever looked. He made adjustments for this second Rockhold fight that won him the fight. You go back and watch the first fight and the second fight, he changed his strategy, made some adjustments. And I think there's also something to be said about Michael Bisping training too much, overtraining himself for some of these fights. And in this instance with Rockhold, he only got to train essentially 2 weeks, so he didn't get to just overtrain his ass off. He comes in there strong, feeling good, looked sharp, Rockhold, and basically fought a perfect fight. Hardly took any damage, took some kicks to the body from Rockhold, but Rockhold really didn't touch him a whole lot. He said it was the easiest fight of his life, and I definitely believe it. And Rockhold, I think Rockhold will go down as one of the greatest. I think he'll come back from this. I don't know that him and Bisping are going to fight, in a quick rematch. But it also brings up the point, you guys, you probably saw on Twitter where Daniel Cormier was bragging about knocking out Luke Rockhold in training a few weeks ago. So you kind of wonder if that, knockout in practice, and once again, those AKA guys, they've got the old school, stupid mentality of let's beat the shit out of each other in the gym and push each other and we'll be champions. That shit doesn't seem to be working out so well for any of them. Constantly hurt. Kane, the stuff there. He's fought, 3 times in 4.5 years? Lost his title twice in there. He looked like shit against Verdum. Didn't take him seriously. I don't think. Didn't take Mexico seriously. And just looked like shit in that fight. I don't think Kane's ever going to regain the prestige he had before. I honestly think Kane's overrated, and that's a whole nother discussion. I think the heavyweight division has just been so poor and filled with so many people 35 and older that, a younger 30-ish Kane who could, push the pace and had good wrestling and decent power, just looked that much better than everybody. But I think that's changed. And with Brock Lesnar coming back, I don't put it out of the realm of possibility that, if he fought smart, learned to take a shot and recover, it's easily conceivable he could win the belt. Really easily. And I'm not a Lesnar fan at all, but I think the competition in the heavyweight division is just that shallow right now. And there are some great fighters in there, don't get me wrong, but, Kane essentially did it so long, and I don't think he's one of the best. He's definitely one of the best in the division. I don't think he's the best. And I think AKA has some soul searching they need to do about how they're training. You've seen the videos of DC and Kane going at it and Rockhold going at it. Why in the fuck are you in a training session and, knocking your a month out from his fight? How much sense does that make? And nobody's ever accused Kane or DC, and especially Rockhold, of being the smartest guys. They're just not. That's why they don't open their mouth a whole lot, and that's why DC takes so much shit when he does open his mouth. And I'm not saying anything new. I'm not trying to trash on these guys. They're warriors. They can look at me and kick my ass, but they don't have the highest fight IQ, it seems, inside or outside the ring. Bisping, on the other hand, again, look at his record. Take out all the guys that were definitely on steroids and TRT. See who he loses to. And look at his wins. You got Brian Stam, Jim Miller, Luke Rockhold, Kung Lee, Talis Latus, Anderson Silva, Jorge Rivera. That's a hell of a record over, 10 years. And on top of that, the mental fortitude he has. If you've ever had your ass kicked, it sucks. It's semi-traumatizing. I've had my ass beat a few times. I'm a smart ass. I'm a loudmouth. And especially in my younger days, I was quick to, get in fights. And a lot of times I picked fights that were not the smartest thing to do. More than once I had two people beating my ass, and it was well deserved. And it sucks. And to have your ass kicked in front of millions of people, not just have it kicked, but be put to sleep, and then come back over, a few months later and win a fight and go on to win more fights. 7 years later, win a world championship. That is amazing. You've got to give Michael his due, and a lot of people aren't. The Anderson Silva fight was a little weird, but there was nothing controversial about the Luke Rockhold fight. He put him to sleep. He outworked him, outclassed him, outthought him, made the adjustments, and beat him fair and square. And Luke Rockhold, I don't see him getting beat by too many people in the world. I think if you look back, he was losing to Weidman, I think, up until the end of the third round, things like that, when he did the flying kick bullshit. But, Luke Rockhold is a beast. And a lot of people aren't giving Michael a change. I think a lot of people need to take a look at it, and you'll see. Again, just the mental toughness of the guy is what amazes me, so put that into perspective. I don't know who he's going to fight next. He'll probably be an underdog like he always is, but you need to quit counting this guy out. I don't think he's going to hold the belt for 5 years or even a couple of years. I think he can defend the belt a few times, and, it'd be in Michael Bisping's, it would seem fitting for him to just tell everybody to screw off and retire with the belt. I think that'd be beautiful, but he needs to make some money. He's still obviously got plenty of time left. And keep in mind, this guy's fighting with one fucking eye. We didn't even mention that. The guy had his goddamn retina detached, had oil put in there. They don't want to reattach everything because it'll just reattach again. So this son of a bitch, all these other things, he's fighting with one goddamn eye. Amazing. People need to give this guy his due. I'm telling you, people are going to look back and, wish they'd appreciate it a little more. And I'll be honest, up until a couple of years, I didn't like watching him fight too much. And then he had a sit-down interview with Ariel Helwani, and it was great. And it just changed my opinion of him. And I've seen a lot of people say the same thing, is they've really come around to really enjoy Michael Bisping, as a fighter and as talking shit. I think he's just kind of like everybody. He talks about, he was broke as shit. His wife was having to support him. He was having to travel and sleep in his car to train. And, look where he's at now. And all along the way, everybody's doubted him and bashed him and talked shit, laughed at him. So, how can you not love that? So that's my thoughts on Michael Bisping. Again, put it all together. Got his ass whipped. Psychological damage. Everybody counting him out. One eye. Already lost to Rockhold. Just all these things. You gotta respect the man. And I think we'll look back and see that Michael Bisping is one of the greatest MMA fighters of this generation. And people need to give him his due.